My name is Valerie Moreau. I lived in hiding for 5 years, raising my son alone, running from a powerful family willing to do whatever it took to erase me. Then, one fateful night at a gala, every secret came crashing into the light. The mother of the man I once loved, a U.S. senator, kidnapped my son, her own flesh and blood.
Before I share my full story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe if you've ever fought for your family, for what you believe in. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happened next.
The champagne flute trembled in my hand as I recognized the laugh. That deep, unguarded sound that used to make my heart skip. Now it made my stomach drop like a stone into dark water. 5 years. 5 years of careful distance, of new names and quiet nights, and here he was. Senator James Callahan, standing 20 feet away in a tuxedo that probably cost more than I made in 2 months. I pressed myself against the service wall, balancing the silver tray while my mind screamed at me to run. But I couldn't. Not without losing this job, and Miles needed new shoes for kindergarten. Miles, who had his father's eyes and that same crooked smile. "Valerie, table 7 needs refills," my supervisor hissed, and I had no choice but to step back into the glittering crowd of Chicago's medical elite. Head down, invisible. Just another server in black and white, weaving between conversations about yacht clubs and charity auctions. I'd almost made it to the kitchen when I felt eyes on me. Not the dismissive glance of someone wanting more wine, but the focused attention of recognition trying to surface. I turned, and James was staring right at me, his brow furrowed like he was solving a puzzle. Our eyes met for half a second before I looked away, but it was enough. Something flickered across his face, not quite recognition, but close. Too close. "Excuse me," a woman's voice, crisp and professional. I turned to find a blonde woman in a midnight blue dress holding out her empty glass. As I took it, she pressed something into my palm along with the stem, a folded napkin. I didn't look at it until I was safe in the kitchen, hands shaking as I smoothed out the paper. The words were written in sharp, confident strokes. "He's watching you. So am I." The tray slipped from my hands, champagne glasses shattering across the industrial tile. As I knelt to clean the mess, fighting tears, I heard my supervisor's exasperated sigh. But all I could think about was that James was here, in my carefully constructed new world, and someone else knew exactly who I was. The rest of my shift blurred together. I kept my head down, stayed in the kitchen as much as possible, but I could feel the walls of my small, safe life beginning to crack. When I finally escaped into the Chicago night, I ran to the L station like I was being chased. Maybe I was. At home, I found Mrs. Chen asleep on my couch, the TV playing some late-night game show. Miles was curled up in his race car bed, one small fist pressed against his cheek. I stood in his doorway, watching him breathe, and made the same promise I'd made every night for 5 years. I would keep him safe, no matter what. But when I went to hang up my server's jacket, something fell from the pocket. A business card, expensive stock, with a phone number and 3 words. "When you're ready." I burned it in the kitchen sink and watched the edges curl into ash. I wasn't ready. I would never be ready. Some secrets were meant to stay buried, even if they were starting to claw their way back to the surface. Sleep didn't come that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in New York, 23, and stupid enough to believe love conquered all. I'd been bartending at a hole-in-the-wall near Columbia, mixing drinks between art classes and pretending I had my life together. James came in during a thunderstorm, soaked and laughing with a group of other law clerks. He ordered a whiskey neat, left a $20 tip, and came back every Tuesday for a month before asking my name. "I'm James," he'd said, like I hadn't already memorized everything about him. How he rubbed his jaw when he was thinking, how his eyes crinkled when he really smiled. "Valerie," I'd replied, and that was it. We fell hard and fast, the kind of love that makes you believe in fate. He'd show up at my shifts with takeout from my favorite Thai place. I'd sit in the back of courtrooms, sketching while he argued cases. We'd stay up until dawn in his tiny apartment, planning a future that felt as solid as the sunrise. I found out I was pregnant the same week he got the call about the congressional nomination. I'd bought a stupid onesie that said future lawyer, and hidden it in his briefcase as a surprise. I never got to see his face when he found it. Catherine Callahan arrived at my apartment on a Tuesday. I remember because I was supposed to be in figure drawing class, but morning sickness had kept me home. She looked like money, the kind of woman who was born knowing which fork to use and how to destroy someone with a smile. "You seem like a smart girl," she'd said, sitting on my second-hand couch like it might stain her Chanel suit. "So let's skip the pleasantries. James has a future, a real future, presidential, if he plays his cards right. And you—" She looked around my cramped studio, at the half-finished paintings and overdue bills on the counter. "You're a lovely diversion, but you're not part of that future." I'd tried to stand up to her, told her James loved me, that we were having a baby. The word baby made her eye twitch, just once, before her face smoothed back into that terrible calm. "Here's what's going to happen," she said, pulling out a folder. "You're going to sign this NDA. You're going to leave New York. You're going to disappear, and in exchange, I won't destroy your life. I won't have you declared an unfit mother. I won't dig up every mistake you've ever made and splash it across the news. You'll have your baby, and you'll have your privacy. But you will never contact my son again." The papers blurred through my tears. 20 pages of legal language that boiled down to one thing: silence. "I won't take your money," I'd said. It was the only power I had left. Catherine laughed, a sound like ice cracking. "Oh, my dear, you'll wish you had." I signed. What else could I do? I was young, scared, and alone. David against Goliath. If Goliath owned 3 media companies and had judges on speed dial. That night, I stuffed everything I owned into 2 suitcases and got on a Greyhound to Chicago. I became Valerie Brooks instead of Valerie Moreau. Had Miles in a charity hospital under a name that wasn't quite mine. Started over with nothing but determination and a baby who looked more like his father every day. Now, sitting at my kitchen table at 3 a.m., I stared at the ashes of that business card and wondered if Catherine was still watching. If she knew about the gala. If she was the one who'd sent that woman with the warning. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but my hands shook as I played the message. "Miss Brooks," a woman's voice, professionally warm. "This is regarding your son's enrollment at Bright Futures Daycare. There's been an issue with his emergency contact forms. Please call us back at your earliest convenience." It was 3 in the morning. Daycares didn't call at 3 in the morning. I went to Miles's room and sat on the floor beside his bed, watching him sleep. He'd been asking about his dad lately. Simple questions I deflected with half-truths. He lives far away. He's very busy. He loves you even though he can't be here. Each lie tasted more bitter than the last. The daycare issue was a Trojan horse. When I arrived that morning, the director handed me an envelope that had been left for me. Inside, a single photo. Miles on the playground, taken with a long lens. On the back, someone had written, "He has his father's smile." I threw up in the parking lot. That afternoon, while Miles was at his swimming lesson, I tore my apartment apart looking for cameras. Found the first one in the smoke detector, so small I almost missed it. The second was in the bathroom vent. The third, tucked inside Miles's favorite stuffed dinosaur. My hands shook so hard I could barely hold my phone. But who could I call? The police? And tell them what? That the grandmother my son didn't know existed was probably spying on us? Instead, I called the only person who'd ever helped me without wanting something in return. "Leah Grant." The voice was professional but warm. It's Valerie from 5 years ago. You helped me with the birth certificate?" A pause. "Valerie, I've been wondering when you'd call." We met at a diner in Chinatown. One of those places with cracked vinyl booths and coffee strong enough to strip paint. Leah looked the same. Sharp suits couldn't hide the weariness around her eyes, the look of someone who'd seen too much. "They're watching us," I said without preamble, sliding the photo across the table. Leah studied it, her jaw tightening. "How long?" "I don't know. I found cameras today. There was a woman at the gala." "You were at the Morrison gala?" Her eyes sharpened. "Valerie, he was there. James was—" "I know." The coffee burned my throat. "I think he almost recognized me." Leah pulled out her laptop, fingers flying across the keys. "I need you to listen carefully. After you left, I did some digging. You weren't the first girl Catherine Callahan made disappear. There was a paralegal in Boston, a campaign volunteer in D.C., all of them young, all of them connected to James, all of them gone. My stomach churned. What happened to them? That's the thing, they're fine. Living quiet lives in different cities, but there's a pattern. She turned the screen toward me. Shell companies, trust funds, all connected to Callahan Industries, all paying out monthly stipends to women who signed similar NDAs. I told you, I didn't take... I know, and that makes you different. That makes you dangerous. Leah's fingers drummed on the table. There's a trust fund in Miles's name, created 2 years ago. You didn't know? The diner spun around me. No, we never... $50,000, managed by a subsidiary of Callahan Industries. The kind of thing that would look generous in a custody battle. Look, Your Honor, we've been providing for the child all along. I gripped the table edge. They can't take him. He doesn't even know they exist. Legally? It's complicated. You used a variant of your name on the birth certificate. No father listed. If they can prove James is the biological father... Leah's voice gentled. Valerie, why didn't you tell him? Before Catherine got involved. The question I'd asked myself 1,000 times. I was going to, that night. I had it all planned. Dinner at that little Italian place he loved. But Catherine got there first. Showed up at my apartment that morning like she'd been watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I laughed bitterly. Maybe she had been. My phone buzzed. Mrs. Chen texting about picking up Miles. Normal life bleeding into this nightmare. What do I do? I asked. First, we document everything. Every camera, every contact, every strange incident. Then, Leah hesitated. You might want to consider reaching out to James before his mother makes the next move. I can't. The NDA might not be as ironclad as you think. Contracts signed under duress, especially those preventing a father from knowing about his child. She shrugged. I'm not saying it would be easy, but you might have options. That night, I sat in my car outside James's Chicago campaign office. I'd found the address online, driven there without thinking. The lights were on in the second-floor corner window. Was he up there working late like he used to? Did he ever think about me? A black town car pulled up and I slunk down in my seat. But it wasn't James who got out. It was the blonde woman from the gala. She looked directly at my beat-up Honda, gave a small nod, and walked into the building. My phone rang. Unknown number. Drive home, Valerie. The woman's voice was calm. We'll talk when you're ready. But right now, you're not the only one being watched. I looked up and saw a shadow in James's office window, standing there, looking down at the street, looking for something, someone. I drove home and held my son extra tight that night. 3 weeks of looking over my shoulder. 3 weeks of jumping when my phone rang, of checking Miles for signs that someone had approached him. I was coming apart at the seams when I made the desperate decision to see James face to face. The Education Summit was perfect cover. 300 people in the Hilton Ballroom, press passes available for freelance journalists. I borrowed a blazer from Leah, pinned my hair back, and became someone else. Someone brave enough to walk into the same room as James Callahan. He was on the panel about early childhood education funding. The irony wasn't lost on me. There he was, talking about supporting single mothers and underprivileged children, while his own son ate generic cereal for breakfast because brand names weren't in the budget. I sat in the back, press badge turned backwards, trying to blend into the wall. But when he spoke about the importance of fathers in children's lives, something in me snapped. My hand shot up during Q&A before my brain could stop it. Senator Callahan? My voice sounded strange, professional. What about fathers who don't know they have children? Who's responsible for that gap in a child's life? The room went quiet. James leaned forward, and I saw it. The moment recognition sparked. His eyes widened, just a fraction, and his hand gripped the microphone tighter. That's a complex question, he said slowly, never taking his eyes off me. I think every situation is unique, but I believe every father has a right to know his child, and every child deserves to know their father. The moderator moved on to the next question, but James kept staring. I should have left then, should have run. but I sat frozen until the panel ended and the crowd began dispersing. I made it to the elevator before he caught up. Val. Just my name. But it broke something in me. No one had called me Val in 5 years. The elevator doors closed with just us inside. 20 floors to the lobby. 20 floors for 5 years of silence to collapse. It is you. His voice was rough. Christ, Val, I looked everywhere. You just vanished. No note, no explanation, nothing. I had to. The words came out strangled. You had to? He hit the emergency stop button and the elevator lurched to a halt. You disappeared overnight. Your landlord said you'd left no forwarding address. Your phone was disconnected. I thought you were dead. I hired investigators. Your mother made it very clear what would happen if I didn't leave. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. His face went white. My mother? What does she have to do with... The elevator phone rang. Security, asking if everything was okay. James told them we were fine, just needed a moment. But his eyes never left mine. Val, what did my mother do? I wanted to tell him everything. About the NDA, about the threats, about Miles sleeping in dinosaur pajamas with his father's stubborn chin. But all I managed was, ask her about the girls who came before me. Boston, D.C., ask her about the NDAs. NDAs? Val, you're not making sense. I have to go. I hit the button, and the elevator started moving again. Please don't follow me. Please. I can't just... He grabbed my wrist, gentle but desperate. Val, please. Whatever happened, we can fix it. Just talk to me. The doors opened to the lobby, and I yanked free. Some things can't be fixed, James. I ran. Through the lobby, past the doorman, into the Chicago afternoon. But I could feel the earthquake I'd started, the careful balance finally beginning to tip. That night, my phone rang 17 times. All unknown numbers, all unanswered. Miles asked why I was crying during bedtime stories. I told him sometimes adults cry when they're happy, and I was happy to have him. He patted my cheek with his small hand, the same gesture James used to make, and said, Don't be sad, Mama. I'll protect you. 5 years old, and already trying to be the man of the house. Tuesday started like any other day. Spilled orange juice at breakfast. Forgotten permission slip for the field trip. Miles's gap-toothed grin as he ran into daycare, backpack bouncing. Love you, Mama. Love you too, baby. Be good. 6 hours later, my world shattered. Mrs. Brooks? The daycare director's voice was careful, too careful. There's been a situation. Miles was picked up early today. The phone slipped from my hand. I could hear her tinny voice continuing as I scrambled to pick it up. Aunt said you'd called about a family emergency. She had all the proper identification. He doesn't have an aunt. My voice came out deadly calm, the eye of a hurricane. Call the police, now. The next hour was a blur of uniforms and questions. When did I last see him? Could I describe what he was wearing? Did I have recent photos? The detective, a tired-looking woman named Martinez, kept using words like custodial dispute and family matter while I screamed inside that someone had taken my baby. The woman had documentation, Martinez said carefully, a birth certificate listing her as the child's legal guardian. That's impossible. I'm his mother. I have his birth certificate. I fumbled for my phone, for the photos of documents I'd learned to keep after Leah's warning. Martinez studied them, frowning. Ma'am, these show the mother as Valerie Moreau. Your ID says Brooks. The room tilted. I changed my name, for safety. I can explain. I'm sure you can. But right now we have conflicting documentation and a child who left willingly with someone he seemed to recognize. She softened slightly. Is there anyone who might have taken him? The father, perhaps? My phone rang before I could answer. James. Where is he? His voice was raw, desperate. Val, where is our son? The words hit like physical blows. Our son. He knew. Someone took him. I was sobbing now, past caring who heard. Someone took Miles, and the police won't. I'm coming. Where are you? James, your mother. I know what my mother did. His voice turned to steel. I confronted her after the summit. I know about the NDAs, the threats, all of it. And I think, Christ, Val, I think she has him. The detective took the phone from my nerveless fingers, speaking in low, professional tones. Jurisdiction, documentation, legal guardianship, words that meant nothing when my child was gone. Leah arrived as they were finishing the formal report. She took one look at the situation and went into full lawyer mode, demanding copies of everything, making calls to judges she knew. The birth certificate they showed is registered in Cook County, she told me quietly. Filed 2 years ago. Professional job, it would pass casual inspection. 2 years ago, when the trust fund was created. Exactly. This was planned, Valerie. Long-term planned. James burst through the station doors like an avenging angel, still in his Senate suit but disheveled, tie askew. He stopped short when he saw me, and for a moment we just stared at each other across 5 years of lies and silence. Then I was in his arms, sobbing into his chest while he murmured promises he might not be able to keep. "We'll find him. I swear to God, Val, we'll find him." "Sir?" Detective Martinez interrupted. "You're the child's father?" Yes, no hesitation. No. "And I believe my mother, Catherine Callahan, has orchestrated this kidnapping." The detective's eyebrows rose. Everyone knew the Callahan name. "That's a serious accusation, Senator." "Then treat it seriously." James's voice could have cut glass. "My mother has a history of using intimidation and false documentation to separate me from people she deems unsuitable. I have evidence, witnesses, and if anything happens to my son because you're too worried about politics to do your job, James," I touched his arm, "she won't hurt him. She just wants to control the situation. Control us." His jaw tightened. "She's controlled enough. Leah, what are our options?" "Legal channels will take time. The documentation looks legitimate on its face. We'd need to prove fraud, which means court hearings, investigations. How long? Days, maybe weeks." "No." I stood up, suddenly clear. "She wants to talk. This is all just leverage for whatever she really wants. So let's talk." James pulled out his phone. "Mother, you have 1 hour to return my son, or I hold a press conference that will destroy everything you've built. Yes, I know you're listening to the police scanner. 1 hour." We waited in the station's family room, the three of us silent. 47 minutes later, James's phone rang. "The Callahan estate," he said after listening briefly. "She wants us to come to the estate." "It's a trap," Leah warned. "Of course it is." I was already moving. "But she has my son." As we drove through the gathering darkness toward the Callahan mansion, I held James's hand and wondered if we were driving toward a reunion or an ambush. Either way, I was getting my baby back, even if it meant facing the woman who'd stolen 5 years of our lives. The Callahan estate looked like money and misery had a baby and raised it in the suburbs. As our car crunched up the circular drive, I saw a small face in an upstairs window. Miles, nose pressed to the glass. I was out before James fully stopped, but security guards stepped forward. Professional, polite, and absolutely willing to tackle me if I ran for the door. "Mrs. Callahan is waiting in the study," one said. Catherine sat behind a massive desk like a queen holding court. Miles was nowhere to be seen, but I could hear cartoon sounds from somewhere above us. My baby was watching TV in this mausoleum while we played out whatever sick game she'd designed. "Valerie," she said my name like it tasted bad. "You look well for someone who's been hiding in the shadows. Where is my son?" "Our grandson is perfectly safe. He's quite bright, you know, already reading at a second-grade level." She smiled thinly. "Of course he would be. The Callahan genes are strong." "Enough." James stepped forward. "You've made your point. You found them. You've proven you can take him whenever you want. What do you want?" Catherine's eyes never left mine. "I want what I've always wanted, to protect this family's future. And despite your best efforts, Valerie, that future now includes Miles." She pushed a folder across the desk. "Inside, you'll find a very generous proposal. Shared custody, with Miles spending the school year here, receiving the best education money can buy. Summers with you, of course. A trust fund for his college. All perfectly civilized." "No." The word came out flat. Final. "I don't think you understand." "I understand perfectly." I stepped closer to the desk. "You want to buy my son. Dress it up however you like, but that's what this is. And the answer is no." Catherine's mask slipped, showing the viper beneath. "You stupid girl. Do you know what I can do to you?" One phone call and every mistake you've ever made will be headline news. That DUI when you were 19, the semester you failed out of community college, the modeling photos you did to pay rent. Mother! James's voice cracked like a whip. Oh, James, still so naive. Did she tell you she was working as a bartender when you met? Serving drinks to men old enough to be her father? Hardly wife material for a future president. I was working my way through art school, I said quietly, and I'm proud of every job I took to survive. Can you say the same? Her face flushed. You have no idea what I've sacrificed. Your son's happiness? His right to know his child? Other women's lives? I pulled out my phone. I recorded everything 5 years ago, Catherine. Every threat, every manipulation. One click, and it goes to every news outlet in Chicago. A bluff. I'd been too scared to record anything, but she didn't know that. You wouldn't dare. The NDA is worthless if it was signed under duress. Leah? I looked at my lawyer, who stepped forward with a smile sharp enough to cut. Mrs. Callahan, I've spent the last 3 weeks building a case that would make your head spin. Extortion, kidnapping, fraud. Would you like me to continue? For the first time since I'd met her, Catherine Callahan looked uncertain. Furthermore, Leah continued, I've been in contact with Melissa Chen from Boston and Sarah Williams from DC. They're very interested in comparing notes about their experiences with your intervention in their relationships with your son. James made a sound like he'd been punched. There were others? She couldn't have you dating the wrong sort, could she? I said bitterly. God forbid you fall in love with someone who worked for a living. Val, enough. Catherine stood. You want to play hardball? Fine. But remember, I own judges. I own media outlets. You own nothing that matters, James interrupted. And if you don't bring Miles down here right now, I'll call a press conference that will make your worst nightmare look like a daydream. I'll tell them everything. The NDAs, the bribes, the kidnapping, everything. You wouldn't. Your career. I don't give a damn about my career. His roar echoed through the study. I have a son you kept from me for 5 years, a son who doesn't even know my name. The silence that followed was deafening, then small footsteps on the stairs. Mama? Miles's voice, uncertain and scared. I pushed past the security guards, who looked to Catherine and then stepped aside when she didn't object. My baby stood at the bottom of the stairs, clutching the stuffed dinosaur with the camera in it. Hey, sweet boy. I knelt and opened my arms. He flew into them, and I breathed him in, juice boxes and crayon wax and little boy sweat. The lady said you were sick, he whispered, but you don't look sick. I'm not sick, baby. Just missed you so much it hurt. I stood, lifting him with me. When I turned, James was staring at us with an expression of such raw longing it took my breath away. Miles, I said carefully, remember how you asked about your daddy? How I said he lived far away? Miles nodded, face buried in my neck. Well, he's not far away anymore. Would you like to meet him? The emergency custody hearing was set for the following Monday. Catherine had pulled every string, called every favor, but even her influence couldn't stop the avalanche we'd started. The court recognizes Mr. James Callahan and Ms. Valerie Moreau, also known as Valerie Brooks, as the biological parents of the minor child, Miles Moreau Brooks, Judge Harrison read, her voice cutting through the packed courtroom. The question before us today is the validity of documentation filed by Mrs. Catherine Callahan claiming guardianship. I sat between James and Leah, trying not to fidget with the buttons on my borrowed suit. Across the aisle, Catherine looked immaculate as always, flanked by a team of lawyers that probably cost more than my annual salary. But we had something she didn't expect. The truth. And witnesses. Your Honor, Leah stood. We'd like to call Melissa Chen. A petite woman in her 30s took the stand. I'd met her the night before, soft-spoken, married now, with twins. But her voice was steel as she described Catherine's visit 7 years ago. The threats, the NDA she'd signed to protect her unborn child. She said James would never know, Melissa testified. That if I tried to contact him, she'd have me declared mentally unfit. She had a folder of manufactured evidence, doctored photos, false psychiatric evaluations. I was 22 and terrified. Sarah Williams came next. Same story, different details. Then the forensic accountant who'd traced the trust funds, the false documentation, the web of lies spanning years. But the moment that broke everything open came when an unexpected witness took the stand. Please state your name for the record. David Callahan. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. I grabbed James's hand as a man who looked like a younger, rougher version of him was sworn in. Mr. Callahan, what is your relationship to the defendant? Catherine Callahan is my biological mother. James is my half-brother, though he didn't know I existed until last week. Catherine's perfect composure finally cracked. This is ridiculous. Your Honor, this man is clearly— Mrs. Callahan, you'll have your turn. Judge Harrison's voice was sharp. Continue, Mr. Callahan. David's story was simple and damning. Born when Catherine was 19 before she married into the Callahan fortune, hidden away, paid off, erased to protect her image. I helped her create the false documents for Miles, he said quietly. She promised it was to protect the family, but I've watched her destroy too many lives in the name of protection. I couldn't watch her do it to another child. You ungrateful— Catherine started to rise, but her lawyers pulled her down. When it was Catherine's turn to testify, she came out swinging. Painted me as a gold digger, mentally unstable, unfit. Brought up every mistake I'd ever made, real or fabricated. This woman kept my grandchild from his family for 5 years, she said, voice dripping with false concern. Living in poverty, denying him his birthright. I kept him safe, I interrupted, standing despite Leah's restraining hand. Safe from someone who sees children as possessions, who thinks love is something you can buy or threaten away. You talk about his birthright? His birthright is to be loved for who he is, not what he represents to your political ambitions. Your Honor, Catherine's lead attorney objected, the witness is badgering— The witness is a mother defending her child, Judge Harrison said dryly. Continue, Ms. Moreau. I looked directly at Catherine. You had me followed, filmed, threatened. You put cameras in my 5-year-old's toys. What kind of grandmother does that? The kind who protects her family's future. No, James stood beside me. The kind who destroys it. Mother, I'm done. Done with the lies, the manipulation, the control. You cost me 5 years with my son. 5 years of bedtime stories and first steps and birthday parties. For what? Your vision of who I should be? He turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'm withdrawing from the Senate race, possibly from politics altogether. I want to be clear about this because I know my mother will claim I'm being coerced or manipulated. I'm not. I'm choosing my family, my real family. The courtroom erupted. Reporters typing frantically, Catherine's lawyers huddling, the gallery buzzing. Through it all, Judge Harrison watched us with thoughtful eyes. I've heard enough, she finally said. Mrs. Callahan, the documentation you provided is fraudulent. Your actions constitute kidnapping, fraud, and custodial interference. I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Catherine's face went white. Furthermore, I'm granting immediate full custody to Ms. Moreau and Mr. Callahan jointly. Mrs. Callahan, you are barred from any contact with the minor child pending criminal proceedings. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. The gavel came down with finality. As court officers moved toward Catherine, she looked at James with something almost like grief. Everything I did was for you. No, Mother. Everything you did was for you. His voice was sad, but firm. I hope someday you understand the difference. We walked out of the courthouse into a media circus, but I barely noticed. Miles was at Leah's office with a social worker waiting for us. Safe, coming home. We did it, I whispered. No. James squeezed my hand. You did it. You protected him when I couldn't. You were brave when I was blind. I was terrified every single day, but you did it anyway. That's what courage is, Val. As we drove to pick up our son, I thought about the price of silence and the cost of truth. Both had nearly broken us. But we were still standing. 6 months later, I stood in front of an easel in natural light that flooded through floor-to-ceiling windows. Outside, Lake Michigan stretched, endless and blue. Nothing like the brick wall view from my old apartment. Mom, look! Miles ran in, tracking snow across the hardwood. Dad and I built the biggest snowman ever. He's got 3 heads. 3 heads? I set down my brush, pretending to be shocked. Is he a snow monster? The best snow monster! He crashed into me for a hug, cold and giggly and perfect. Dad says we can make snow angels after lunch. James appeared in the doorway, cheeks red from the cold, looking nothing like the polished senator from that gala a lifetime ago. His jeans were soaked at the knees, his hair sticking up at odd angles. He was beautiful. Sorry about the floors, he said, not looking sorry at all. Floors can be cleaned. I kissed his cold nose. Snow monsters are forever. Forever and ever. Miles agreed solemnly, then brightened. Can I have hot chocolate? With marshmallows? So many marshmallows! As he raced to the kitchen, James wrapped his arms around me from behind, studying the painting on my easel. It was part of my new series, abstract pieces about silence and sound, dark spaces with light breaking through. This one's powerful, he murmured. It's about the day in the elevator, when everything started cracking open. Best emergency stop I ever pulled. I leaned back against him. Even though it cost you your career? It didn't cost me anything that mattered. He turned me to face him. Val, I need to tell you something. My heart stuttered. Even now, after everything, those words could still spark panic. The Legal Aid Center called. They want me to head up their new family law division. It's not glamorous, and the pay is nothing compared to— Yes. I kissed him before he could finish. Of course, yes. You don't even know the details. I know you'll be helping people like I was. Scared parents who need someone to fight for them. That's all the detail I need. Miles ran back in, precariously balancing 3 mugs of hot chocolate. We settled on the couch, our son between us, watching snow fall over the lake. Mom? Miles asked, marshmallow foam on his upper lip. Are you happy now? Such a simple question with such a complicated answer. Was I happy? The nightmares still came sometimes. I still checked locks twice and looked over my shoulder in parking lots. Trust, once shattered, took time to rebuild. But Miles was safe and laughing. James was here, solid and real. My art was finally saying something true. We'd built this life from the rubble of lies, and it was good. Yeah, baby, I'm happy. Good. He snuggled closer. Because Dad said we could get a dog. He did he? I looked over Miles's head at James, who was trying not to laugh. A big dog, with spots, named Professor Waffles. Professor Waffles? It's a good name. Later, after Miles was asleep and the dishes were done, James found me in my studio. I was preparing for my first real gallery show, not erased, opening next month. You nervous? He asked. Terrified. I studied the paintings lining the walls, each one a piece of our story. What if people don't understand? What if they just see me as the senator's baby mama who— Hey, he caught my hands. They'll see an artist who survived, who protected her child, who found her voice after years of enforced silence. They'll see the truth. The truth, I repeated. Remember when that seemed impossible? Nothing's impossible, Val. We're living proof. My phone buzzed. An email from the TED Talk organizers, confirming my spot at next month's event. The Cost of Silence, a mother's story. You sure you want to do this? James asked. Once you tell the whole story publicly, Catherine's NDA will be worthless. She'll have no power left. I smiled. I'm sure. We stood there in my studio, surrounded by paintings that told our story in color and shadow and light. The woman who'd once threatened to destroy me was awaiting trial. The son she'd tried to steal was asleep down the hall. The man she'd kept from me was here, solid and real and mine. I love you, I said. Simple words that had once seemed impossible to speak. I love you too. Both of you. All of us. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the world in clean white silence. But it wasn't the heavy silence of secrets anymore. It was the peaceful quiet of a story finally told, a family finally whole, not erased, not silenced, not anymore, just free.
If you've ever been silenced, pushed out of your own life, remember this. The truth holds power, and a mother's love can't be bought or controlled. Don't let anyone define you by your past. Stand up, tell your story, and take back what's yours.